Hello, and welcome to another episode of EpicEarth, a podcast for those curious about the STEM fields and the awesome, quirky, and fun experiences and research that is taking place right now. This is episode number 6, The Power is Yours. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride as we take a journey around this epic Earth.
Welcome to another episode of Epic Earth. I'm Ashley Bosa, and I have both of my co-hosts here with me today, Brian Rosenblatt
Hey, how's it going?
and Scott Gavain.
How's it going?
How's it going, guys? So this is actually our first Zoom podcast that we're doing, which is kind of new for us, but we're going to give it a go anyways. So I have a question for Scott and Brian. Have you guys ever seen Captain Planet, or do you know of Captain Planet?
No, never heard of it.
I've probably aged myself here, but basically Captain Planet was an environmentalist superhero that was created in the early 1990s. And it's quite hilarious. He basically has 5 Planeteers who use basically the 5 elements, which is earth, wind, fire, water, and heart. And they basically, when their forces are combined, they produce Captain Planet. And it's kind of hilarious. It's like a really agey cartoon, but you guys should look it up. But I bring that up because a lot of the things that they did was they combated a lot of environmental sort of issues and ecological disasters in this program, which is really hilarious. And they even have a website, I think, which is like promoting basically for children or for anyone really, where they talk about environmental issues and social issues and community impact issues. And so in this sort of like make-believe world of Captain Planet, you know, they're taking care of all these environmental disasters. But the reason why I brought that up is because there are actually people in the world and even here at BSU who are actually dealing with those issues and using science to deal with those issues. And so that brings me to introducing our very special guest today, Carson MacPherson-Krutsky. Hi, Carson.
Hello, happy to be here.
Thanks for coming. So Carson is a research scientist here at Boise State University, and she's also a research scientist for the Natural Hazard Center at CU-Boulder. Is that correct?
Yes, I just started that position 2 weeks ago.
Very cool. So she shares her positions equally between here and CU-Boulder. And she's also the co-founder of the Boise State Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, HCRI, which we're going to be getting into a little bit here with her. But basically their mission is to connect researchers, students, and community partners to collaboratively address community resilience research and the practical needs, basically around a lot of natural hazards or other environmental issues, stresses from things like climate change. And especially here around Boise, we get a lot of wildfires and the smoke that impacts us and how we deal with that on a daily basis with our health and other things. In addition, Carson is the co-owner of HazardReady, LLC. It's a company that provides personalized risk and preparedness information via easy to use websites, which hopefully she can tell us a little bit about. And yeah, so Carson is kind of doing a lot in terms of this hazard and climate resilience. But really her background is in geoscience, and she has degrees from different universities. She got her BS from Western Washington. She also got her master's from the University of Montana, and then she just, I think recently got her PhD here from Boise State University. So Carson, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot here, but do you want to tell us a little bit about about that path and what
Yeah.
got you into the hazard preparedness?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Ashley. So yeah, my background, my BS, as you mentioned, was in geoscience. I went to Western Washington and just loved it for, the outdoors and getting to see all these cool things when you're outside and understand how things work. And I did an internship with the USGS following my undergrad, where we were going out. I was down in California, and I was just out measuring gravity. I was a field lackey and just taking measurements and stuff. And we were on all these different people's lands, and it started making me think about how the people who live in these places where we're collecting data, do they ever actually see the maps and information that we're collecting, like on their actual property, and maybe have implications for them? And so that kind of inspired me to go to graduate school thinking about geoscience education. And then about the summer before my master's started at University of Montana, the Oso landslide happened, which was in 2014. And that was the most deadly landslide in US history. And it happened about 45 minutes northeast of where I grew up in Seattle. So I knew that area, and it was a situation where there had been decades of scientific knowledge letting us know that that area was really prone to landslides and instability. There had been a previous landslide there in 2006. But despite all that information and scientific knowledge, the people who were living at the base of these really hazardous areas had no idea that they were even at risk. And unfortunately, developers developed in these really risky areas, and people died because of it. So that really kicked off me thinking about this issue of, we can have all the science in the world, but if it's not translated and provided to these communities or planners, then how is that helpful in the long term? And so that's really where my passion comes from, is thinking about how do we translate this information? How do we make it practically useful for people? So during my master's, that was creating the HazardReady sites. And so on the back end, you're using all that geospatial data for the website. So we made it for different areas. For my master's, it was for Missoula County. And you have geospatial data on where landslides have happened, wildfires, flooding, earthquake zones. And so as a resident, though, you don't see that. You just type in your address, and then it tells you what your hazard risks are where you live. So you keep it really simple. And then coming to Boise State, working with Brittany Brand, who is co-founding the HCRI with her and I, that was really motivated by a similar need to kind of connect across these issues. Geohazards helps us understand, the technical aspects of the hazards, but we also need to connect, with communications people. We need to connect with social scientists. We need to connect across the university and with practitioners in order to make sure that we're translating that information properly. And there just wasn't really a mechanism to do that. And so that was sort of why we decided to start the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, or HCRI, as we like to call it, because that's kind of a mouthful. So yeah.
No, that's really interesting. And what an innovative way to get the research out there as well, to take the science and make it accessible to the wider community, and show them how, our fields actually apply to, the places that they live and how they live and their lifestyles, and maybe how some of that can mitigate some of the hazards and the stresses that they're dealing with from all of these natural hazards. That's super awesome. So I wanted to kind of get into this HCRI. And so you already mentioned Dr. Brittany Brand, who is a faculty member here. She's a professor here at Boise State University. You also work with Dr. Matthew Isbell, who is in the communications department. And can you just give us a little bit of information about his role in the Institute?
Yeah. So first I'll give you a little bit on Brittany, and then I'll tell you about Matt. So Brittany, as you mentioned, is associate professor. Her background is a volcanologist. So she and I had a similar path towards, starting with the hazards and the more concrete geoscience stuff, and then thinking more about, okay, how are people actually getting this information? And so over the course of her career, she also started to get really interested in volcanic hazards, communicating those, and then that kind of broadened out to multi-hazard hazards and more resilience type topics. So that's kind of where she came from. So her and my interests are pretty well aligned in that respect. But then when we were starting this institute, both of us come from sciences, and we don't necessarily know how to start. It's almost like a little startup. It's like a business, right, here at Boise State. And so we started talking to Matt Isbell, who's a professor in the communications department and has a lot of strengths, and his research is looking at organizational development. And so we really brought him on to help us think about how we actually grow as a community and as a sort of structure and institution here at Boise State.
That's great. Yeah, multidisciplinary for sure. And it's super great that you could also incorporate other departments here at Boise State University into sort of the bigger idea of what the Institute does.
Yeah, and I was just going to jump in real quick. We also have an executive team of researchers across Boise State who are in different, engineering, communications, political science. So we have kind of this broader team of about 10 or 12 people. You can check out our website to see who those people are. And then we have an advisory board also who are mostly full with community members. So we have kind of two tiers of interaction across the university and then also in the community. And then we have our kind of core leadership team. So that's our structure.
Great. Yeah. And we are going to post the link to your website on our website. So if people want to check it out, it will be posted right below Carson's YouTube video. So I guess that also brings me into a question about who else gets involved with HCRI? Is it only researchers and scientists and people from higher institutions, or are there like community members who can join and be a part of some of the projects that you guys undertake?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, we all of the above is the answer. So we our kind of starting point was to build connections across, the university, but then really the last 2 to 3 years, we've been really focused on developing connections with our community because they're the ones who are telling us what research and information they need. And so those kinds of relationships are super important. So yes, if you're a researcher or a student at Boise State who's interested in developing community resilience, doing applied science, then we really encourage you to you can create a profile on our website, and that's really just to connect people. And community members also have the option to create a profile. So if you go to our website, you can kind of see which community partners are already involved. We have people from emergency management, local planning organizations, kind of individual businesses, just general informed, interested citizens. So yeah, we really exist to connect people, and that is not limited to people at the university. We're also really excited about partnering with people even at other local universities, like University of Idaho. And we have some students even who are at, we have one student who's been really involved who's from Yale and just was really interested and lives here in Boise, finishing her dissertation and wanting to get involved. So we're quite open.
Yeah, it sounds like a very diverse community of people who are part of the Institute. That's great. As far as HCRI goes, we're going to ask you some more questions about it, but I actually want to find out more about you, Carson, and sort of what your background is. And sort of, you came from a geoscience sort of educated background, but what happened prior to that? How did you actually get into geosciences?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I've enjoyed, like towards the end of high school, I think I enjoyed kind of getting out in the outdoors. I really started getting into hiking with friends once I had my license. I also was a rower on a crew team for many years throughout high school and college. So I was outside in the boat on the water a lot, looking at the landscape around me. And I think I started at Western Washington knowing I was interested in science. And then I started taking classes, and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go. Western had an environmental sciences track, or you could do geoscience, or those were kind of two I was deciding between. And I remember just taking an intro geology class and just like, it was so exciting. It was so cool to learn about dinosaurs and rocks. And like think on these scales that are so much bigger than, we normally think on. So that was just really exciting for me. And I really enjoyed all the people who were in the department there. It was really, really awesome. And yeah, so that's kind of what got me into just geoscience to begin with.
Great. Yeah. Is there, do you have any family members who are geoscientists or that kind of inspired you?
No, I come from a family of artists. So my parents both are very artsy, grew up doing lots of like crafts and things and had whatever we wanted to make at home, I could do art or I could build something or whatever. So I actually came from more of a background, but they always really encouraged curiosity and really were excited about me going into science. And I think it's been interesting now, like going through my graduate degrees, because I was very in undergrad, I was very focused on science and I had a math minor. And so I was very math and science oriented. And then now I've brought a lot more of that, like how do we make these technical concepts easier for people to understand? And a lot of times you use imagery to do that. So it's been kind of fun to see how that, my background in art kind of has come full circle into the sciences.
A little bit of a off-topic question, but we're trying to start a podcast geoscience band. So do you play any instruments?
I
don't actually. I sing a little bit, but not really.
Keep that noted.
We have quite a few people that we've interviewed so far who are very musically talented or artistically talented just across the board. Maybe Carson and I can show up and do some art while you guys play music.
I'll make a band poster for your first event.
We love to hear it. Great. Well, thanks, Carson. That's awesome. It's great to see just a different background of people who come into this department. And I think into the sciences in general. I think, we're all on different journeys on this planet. And it's cool to have everyone's different perspectives and like where they came from and what sort of drew them into the sciences in the first place. Rocks and dinosaurs is definitely up there on the top of the list.
It's a common thread.
Yeah. Great. So let's get back to HCRI. So can you explain some of the projects maybe that HCRI is undertaking at the moment? You don't have to explain all of them, but maybe a couple of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of our vision for like the big projects that we're really hoping to work on. And then for specific examples of projects, our website has a lot of stuff that kind of shows what specific researchers are doing, but kind of as the HCRI whole, what we are visioning and working towards is kind of being a hub for communities, an information and data hub, and a place where communities can come get information. Maybe they want, have a question about, I wonder if this kind of mitigation strategy would help reduce flooding in our region, but they don't know where the floodplain information is. They could come to us and we would have those data layers and data sets and the expertise to help them answer those kind of real world questions. Or if we don't have that data, we would have the right people who could go out and collect that information and bring students in and do projects like that. Another piece we want to be able to do for communities that maybe are less resourced or just don't have the capacity, which is true for a lot of rural communities here in Idaho, is to help do kind of these holistic resilience assessments. And so looking at these different aspects of resilience, when we started, we were very focused on the intersection of the natural and the built environment. So where these hazards are intersecting with infrastructure. But as we started to connect with people, meet more people, you realize that for people to respond well when a hazard event happens, you also need resilient people living in the communities. And it takes more than just having the hazard not affect a certain area. You need people who are healthy, who are have access to food, have access to housing. And so being able to kind of better understand where those stresses are within a community is actually going to help us better plan to create resilient communities in the future. So what we're hoping to do is partner with different communities here in Idaho, and then potentially expand later to do some of these assessments that help communities better understand where are these challenges or weaknesses in our communities that are ultimately leading to these problems down the line if a flood does happen, or a wildfire, or an earthquake. And so, yeah, helping communities and creating resources is a big push for us right now.
Yeah, that's great. I know that this is something that typically is always on scientists' minds, especially when you're working in areas where there are large hazards. Like I work on a volcano, a very active volcano that has these rain-triggered mud flows every summer, and you know there's hundreds of them that occur every summer, and it's you're always constantly thinking in the back of your mind, how do we better prepare the communities that live around these hazards, and make sure that, you know, we're informing them of the hazards well in advance so that they can, you know, evacuate or get out of the drainages or whatever it is that they need to do. So I think these are really cool initiatives that you and Brittany and Matt are undertaking, and that whole executive team. And yeah, I'll be interested to see some of the projects that you guys actually undertake and you're able to do. And I hope that, you know, a lot of people will be involved and engaged in the Institute itself.
Yeah, and I also want to just give you a little bit of sense of like some of the smaller projects that are going on. So we were able to do a little request for proposals last year, and we're able to fund these small grants for 4 projects at Boise State. And just an example of one of those, Jayesh Paudel, who's in the economics department, is working with, one of the requirements for the grant was that you work closely with a community partner, that they help you to or ask the question. And one of the questions was, what is the value of the green belt here in Boise? Because to justify maintaining the green belt or expanding it for policy reasons, we need to know, like, what is the value that it's actually serving. And so we had an emergency manager come talk to us about that, and then connected them with Jayesh, and now they're doing a little project on that. And so that's kind of like a real world example of one of the smaller projects also that HCRI members are working on.
That's excellent. Yeah. And sometimes I think, you know, we can take these things for granted because we have them like right on our doorstep, but we may not utilize them as much, or we do use them, but maybe the risk of which they're at is like not known to us, or we're not aware of the fact that, you know, these things could be developed on, or they could be gone in 10 years. And so I think bringing that awareness to everyone, at least to the forefront, is really important as well. Super cool. I love it. So a little bit of a sillier question, but hopefully you have an answer for this, maybe not, but if you could describe your work for HCRI as an analogy, what sort of analogy would you use?
Yeah, I was talking to Brittany about this earlier because we were trying to brainstorm what it would be. And I had a very complicated analogy, and she was like, maybe we should do a simple one, like a hub and spokes. You know, we have this wheel, right, where everybody's a different spoke, and people are all working in their different, you know, expertise and disciplines. But the HCRI really is, the goal is to connect all those spokes. So to have kind of this place where everybody can come to, we can coordinate, we can, you know, share information. So that's the analogy, the simple analogy that we came up with.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome analogy.
I love it.
Yeah, it's like the sum of all the parts, and
Yeah.
we're all coming together to build this community resilience.
Carson, that was a great analogy, and this all gives me so much comfort to hear that this is going on. I had a question for you about the HCRI meetings. What do those entail? Like who is involved, and what's going on in those meetings?
Yeah, so we have a couple different types of meetings. So one kind of meeting we have with our executive team / advisory board, they come and go kind of depending on what the topic for the meeting is. So we have monthly meetings with them to present on the work that we're doing, to talk about the direction we're going, to think about how to fund us long-term, which has been a big focus for us lately. We're accepting donations, so if anyone's interested. And so those are kind of monthly meetings that are a little bit more, many people are welcome to attend, but they're a little bit more specific to planning around the Institute. But then I'm the community engagement coordinator for the HCRI. And so I've been coordinating monthly community engagement events that are panels related to resilience topics in Idaho. And so we sent out request for people to brainstorm ideas about what kinds of information and topics they wanted to think about this year. And then I've organized those into panels. So last month in September, we had one focused on climate change and social justice, which was really wonderful. We had panelists from the Upper Snake River Tribes Foundation, from Hcri that focuses on homelessness here in Idaho, and then another one, which I'm blanking on right now, that focuses on farm worker rights and Hispanic and Latino rights here in Idaho. And that one was really interesting to think about how climate change and social justice are connected. This month, we're actually as a little more maybe geoscience aligned. We're talking about water in Idaho, and Kendra Kaiser, who's also a professor in the department, will be co-facilitating that with me. And we have some water experts to talk about how is water use changing here in Idaho, and how do we plan for the future and try to create systems that are going to be able to withstand changes. So yeah, so those are kind of our monthly meetings for community. Anybody's welcome to come. Right now they're all virtual, but they were in person before COVID.
That's awesome. I'm just so impressed with all of this.
Yeah, this is really great, Carson. So just thinking about, I don't know, your work with HCRI or even just your geoscience background, do you have any fun stories from the field? Any like anecdotal stories or anything that you?
I feel like the field is not part of what I do anymore, unfortunately. I just sit in front of my computer most of the time, but we do get to engage with a lot of people. So I think I'll tell you two things. The first story is that like when the pandemic first started, we were trying to think of ways to connect with our community. And so we held, just like Brittany and I put together, two sort of community forums, I guess. And we had, I think across the two forums, I think we had over like 200 people attend. And it was just really exciting to see all these people who were interested in the same things we were, coming together, even in this time when, it felt so stressful and we felt so disconnected and kind of isolated. So I guess that's like one example of just like, it felt really exciting to see that the Institute was actually motivating people to kind of come together. It was like doing what we wanted it to be doing. And then more recently, Brittany's had about 4 students, international students, apply as for graduate programs with her, and they've applied because of the HCRI. So they've like found out about Boise State through whatever. One is from Bangladesh, so it's the word is starting to get out there, and so I guess that was just really exciting to see that students were really interested in actually getting pulled in because of this work that we're doing.
Yeah, that's great that your influence is sort of spreading globally now. I mean, it's so important, right? Like these issues aren't just happening here in Boise or not even just the United States. They're everywhere. We're all globally connected. So super cool. I'm excited to see these grad students, if they, end up coming here to Boise State, be interesting.
Me too.
So another really serious question. How would the HCRI solve a scientific problem if we all lived on Venus? Or what sort of projects would the HCRI do you think would undertake if we all lived on Venus?
Yes, great question. Great question. I was talking to Brittany about this one too, and we decided that we would partner with the Venetians who live on the planet and make sure that, we really understand, they're the experts of their own planet. So we would really try and work with them and our community of scientists to better understand what are the problems going on Venus and how can we leverage our individual expertise to help solve them.
That's awesome. We love it. Great. Well, I have one more question for you, unless Scott and Brian have any other questions. No?
Quick one.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Can you say Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute 5 times fast?
5 times. Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, 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 Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute.
Woo!
Good job.
That was awesome.
When we first started, we were the Natural Hazards Risk and Resilience Consortium. So it's actually gotten a lot better.
Always improving.
That's right. Shortening that acronym down.
Well, thanks for that.
Great question, Brian. So our last sort of question for you is if you could throw a parade of any caliber through the office here at Boise State, what sort of parade would you throw and why?
What do you mean by what sort of parade?
Like, I mean, would it just involve like big balloons? Would it have actual like floats that people had to make?
I feel like it would be like a conga line, honestly. We're all just like connected, dancing, having fun. Yeah, we're hoping to have an actual conference, an HCRI conference. I think maybe I mentioned that already. I don't know. And in May, so we wanted to hold it in May of 2020, but obviously pandemic messed that up. And we were hoping to do it this spring. I don't know if it's still going to happen, but that would be another opportunity to have a conga line there. But then also just, yeah, like have a place where you can actually learn about all the stuff that's going on. Yeah.
That really sounds like our department. I can picture it so well.
Right? It'd be great.
Yeah, we can get the geoscience band to play too.
Oh, yeah.
And have a bit of an art walk, a conga line and an art walk.
Love it. Love it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carson, for being here with us today and just enlightening us about the HCRI and everything that you guys are doing. It's an amazing institute, and I recommend that everyone gets involved in it. These are really important issues, especially around, you know, how our world is just changing so rapidly these days. And, you know, we're seeing summers which include wildfires for much longer and warmer weather and not as much snowpack. So these are all really important issues, and you know, it's better to be prepared. What's the saying? Yeah, it's like what is it called? I forget the saying, but there's some sort of alliteration that's like preparation and something.
Better safe than sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And I also wanted to sort of extend and offer to, you know, the department and students in the department that, you know, if you have questions about how to engage with community members, or, you know, projects where, you know, you really would like to connect with someone about hazards, maybe a local planner or a developer or something in your research, we're happy to help make those connections. And also, we're really passionate about communicating science well. And so if you have questions or would like feedback on even posters or talks, how to translate information, we're definitely a resource to do that too.
Awesome. And I think we should do you have a link for donations to HCRI? We could put that on.
We're just now putting it together. It should be ready in like a week or two. So we don't have it quite yet, but
will that be through the actual website itself? Or?
Yeah, there'll be a tab on the website that says support us. And we're just putting that together right now. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So we will include that website on our website for anyone who's interested, or you can just Google HCRI Boise State and go straight to their website. It's a great institution. So thank you so much, Carson. And lastly, is there anyone you'd like to give shout outs to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've had some really great community partners who've been excited about our work since the beginning and have been involved. So Crash Marusic is an emergency manager here in Ada County. He's just been a big supporter. Rob Littrell, who was the Boise State emergency manager, he just retired this summer, has also been a big advocate for us and really involved. And so I would say both of those folks have just been great.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carson. We appreciate you and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Carson. Stay resilient.
That's right. You too.
Who's ready for some epic news? Recently, Princeton geophysicist Suki Manabe has won the 2021 Nobel Prize in Physics. Manabe is a Japanese-born scientist and U.S. citizen since 1975 who genuinely loves modeling the Earth. As someone who has modeled very less complicated things, this man is insane. Just kidding. He, quote, never dreamed he would win the Nobel Prize in Physics. If you look at the list of past winners, they are amazing people who have done marvelous work. In contrast, he thinks what he has been doing looks trivial, but he is not going to complain. To me, it just seems like there's this correlation between humility and intelligence and success. Personally, this guy embodies what I want to be in a scientist and a human being. So, what did he do? He pioneered meteorological modeling, which started from simple models taking chunks of the ocean and atmosphere and calculating their local temperature, wind speed, and current speeds. Once doing this, ocean currents and pressure patterns exactly like those on the globe appear when a program is operated after setting conditions. When conditions are set, someone using the model can change parameters such as increase CO2 concentration in these chunks of atmosphere or decrease local temperature. This model has now evolved to incorporate land surfaces along with ocean and atmosphere, as well as the flux of fine particles and chemical substances through the air. To me, this is a huge deal. The Nobel Prize is typically won by pure physicists, but Manabe is an atmospheric geophysicist whose work seriously has impacted the world and not just a small subset of one subject matter. No offense, physics, but congrats to Suki Manabe.
Well, that was an epic conversation.
We'd like to thank all of our listeners.
Tune in next time for another Epic Earth podcast.
All right, who's ready for some epic news?
Heck
Recently,
yeah. Sorry.
there's a blooper.
Okay.
You want to meet my cat?
Yeah, we should just end on that.